So one of our biggest responsibilities in the modern world, us as in everybody, is how to use this capacity for unity and diversity, and
Hmm.
for human welfare, human advancement, and not to use it for artificial uniformity that crushes the spirit.
Yeah. Welcome, my friends. Thank you for joining me. I'd like to reintroduce you to a wonderful couple of powerful friends within the community who are holding within their hands the trusteeship that is the Metta Center for Nonviolence, authors of books, creators of board games, and in general, the wonderful leaders of the movement for peace and education, at least in my immediate vicinity. Thank you both for joining me. And as usual for these discussions, I like to begin them with topics that are hopeful or something that is happening in the world that is allowing you to feel motivated to continue your adventure within this world of nonviolence and peace
Yeah,
education.
yeah.
Is there anything in particular? I can start with Steph, if you have something in your mind that you would like to recommend to people to learn about that might help them to lift their spirits and feel the fiery passion of nonviolence.
We actually wanted to talk about hope today and uh, the strategic power of nonviolence and hope altogether. So, this idea, which I won't go into too much right here at the beginning, is I just want to put it out there that our entire conversation today will be about hope.
Very nice.
And if I'm feeling hope about something, hmm.
What is motivating you at this moment?
Mhm.
Pursuit of your journey of satyagraha.
Your love of cats, for example.
Love of cats.
It's motivating me. Well, really that there's no other way forward than nonviolence in our world. So
Yeah.
to better understand it and to help support other people in that journey
Mhm.
is what motivates me. We've recently started to offer mediation services at Meta, something that I've been holding on to for a while. Um, Mediation is absolutely a tool for the nonviolent path.
Mm.
Comes from a restorative angle, basically the sense that we can handle our conflicts, and conflict doesn't need to mean violence,
Mhm.
and that we can see conflict as a pathway to awakening,
Mhm.
or it can be a pathway to shutting down.
Mm.
So, with proper tools and mediation and skills, we can
Mhm.
help direct it a little bit more toward the awakening side.
Mhm.
So that motivates me right now.
Yeah.
Um, and then otherwise, I was thinking about the idea of conflict. I was trying to understand. I've never thought of conflict as winning,
Mm.
like you win a conflict. And I think it's something that as a movement, we do need to start thinking about, not in terms of how do we win, but that the general frame of it in mainstream seems to be about winning,
Mhm.
which makes conflicts harder. So I don't know if you've ever been in a conflict with someone and then they shut down because they feel like you're just trying to one up them in the
Yeah.
conflict. And that really might not be your intention,
Yeah.
but it's sort of like in us viscerally that conflict is about winning in some way. And then obviously we have larger social conflicts that are wars and covert wars and uh, political tensions, and that this idea of winning is used a lot. And I was really having a moment of trying to process that in my mind. I just never ever go there that conflict is about that the idea is to win a conflict. Conflict is always about reconciliation, transformation, better understanding, mutual support, uh, cooperation, working things out.
Mm.
Never has the thought occurred to me that I'm trying to win something. So, how do we balance that? How do we get that idea that conflicts aren't for winning,
Mm.
but for awakening into into the ideas of the mainstream? And
Yeah.
I want to put that on the table as we start this conversation. And otherwise, I'll pass it over to Michael.
That's wonderful. And for everyone interested in that mediation process, links are down below. Is this something that you're teaching or offering as a service?
Offering as a service. Yeah, we're doing mediation services and conflict coaching as well. So if you are in a conflict and you're not ready, maybe you don't have the other party who's willing to be in a mediation to work things out, to talk about things with the facilitator, then happy to consult with you and just sort of talk through the conflict with you.
How wonderful. Ah, so that's a very hopeful thing. Well done.
Yeah, okay. Very purposeful and much needed in our world. And these are skills that we can all develop too. It is hopeful.
How cool. Ah.
I guess that leads me to want to say two things. One is what Stephanie is doing in a way fulfills a long, frustrated ambition of mine. When we started the PAX program in Berkeley in probably the late 70s. I mean, we're going back there.
Peace and conflict studies.
Peace and conflict studies, right, PAX. I wanted to call it peace studies, but my colleagues said, oh, you can't do that. It has to be peace and conflict studies. All right. But in the write-ups, in the proposals to the deans to ask for permission to start the program, I had to promise that we would never require funding, and we wiggled our way around that later on. But B, I said that we could be a service that would offer mediation skills on campus. And, UC Berkeley campus, which was like not just the public eye, it was in the eye of the world at that time because it just exited from the free speech movement. It was a very contentious place. And I thought PAX we could actually practice, not just teach. But they wouldn't let me do that. So that was one thing. And then I wanted to respond to what Stephanie was saying about the vocabulary of winning. And it's a very sad reflection that I think we all need to reckon with, that the cards are very seriously stacked against us. That even when we as peace people want to develop nonviolence, creative conflict resolution, when we enter the stream of discourse, the language that we're given to communicate with is loaded in the direction of violence.
Yes.
For example, I get a lot, having donated little bits and drabs of money here and there, which was a big mistake. I'm deluged by funding requests. And if I had some kind of a magic screen or filter that would filter out the ones that say, I have to defeat MAGA, you have to help me crush MAGA. And using the language of winning in a most extreme way. If I filtered those out, I'd have maybe 5% of those things left, which is by way of saying that we really have the cards stacked against us because the very discourse that we enter, the narrative, is already loaded against us. The idea that, and success is regarded as competitive. Now, on the other hand, let me cycle back to your actual question. So imagine that. One of the things that gives me hope is a very positive development in science that's taken place over, roughly about a quarter of a century, something like that. Um, the science that I was taught growing up as a kid in public school, high school, and on into college was very materialistic and very reductionist. I remember one professor saying, what are we? We are a primate with flat fingernails. And we all looked down and said, well, by golly, we have flat fingernails. That was about it. But given the incredible breakthrough of quantum theory and de Broglie's 1926, mind you, this is a 1926 discovery. I'm being educated in the late 40s, early 50s, and still haven't caught on. But de Broglie discovers the wave function of the electron, I
Mm.
think, and that leads to Planck's. Well, actually, just before that, Planck had discovered quantum theory,
Mm.
completely exploded this mechanistic, you know, Democritian theory that were composed of little particles that bang around. And of course, for a while, it was fantastically successful finding out how many of those little particles there are. Only we've reached the point now where we've realized that there's no end of discovering particles because they are, their wave energy forms into one kind of particle.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, science is important theoretically in the way people think about the world. And science has discovered tremendous spiritual capacities within the human being. And it is really just a question of what Stephanie was just alluding to, getting these wonderful ideas into the mainstream. But it's not like those ideas are not there anymore, which, as far as I knew growing up, I never heard of any of this stuff.
Yeah. I certainly hadn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's waiting in the, what is it that Arundhati Roy says? I can almost hear her breathing.
Yeah.
So in a way, what you could say is that what nonviolence is doing, what we are doing with nonviolence, is trying to lift the curtain.
Mm.
I'm not
So
sure I quite followed what you were saying about science, though, Michael. Can you say
yeah,
that
well,
again?
it starts with an observation that my late friend Willis Harman made, that science is the knowledge validating system
Mm.
of our civilization. If you say that something is not borne out by science, officially people will say that it's not real.
Mm.
It's not true. Now they wriggle their way around that in many ways. But since we grew up in a physically oriented, mechanistic world, when science was incredibly powerful, for good or for bad, we just passed the two dates of August 6th and August 9th, where science was incredibly destructive,
Oh, sure.
but incredibly powerful. So, what science teaches about who we are is has a big authority with people. Okay, one sec. And what it teaches about who we are is actually very, very upbeat. Yeah. Uh, well, what did you want to interrupt with, Steph?
Two things. Two things. One is I feel like we've already jumped into a hope tank,
Yeah.
which so a hope tank is a bit of an open but focused conversation around the ideas of nonviolence. So we feel like everybody needs to start having these conversations because when we're only thinking about nonviolence or studying it on our own, it's really hard when somebody asks you a question about it or how you feel about a topic to
Mhm.
have the words ready to form thoughts fully formed and
Yeah.
worked out. So hope tanks help to form those thoughts and also to look at the very variety of angles
Mhm.
of the nonviolent experience. So
Mhm.
plug for hope tanks there, and we want to
Yeah.
talk about that some more.
Yeah.
This is a hope tank. This is what we're doing. Is we're
Mhm.
doing that. So,
Mhm.
Michael, I have a couple of concerns with the idea that maybe science is no longer the knowledge validating system in this rise to authoritarianism
Absolutely.
and fascism. So, science would say that climate change is real.
Yeah.
Science would say that we're not separate. I mean, as far as we want to go, science says so many beautiful things, and yet those narratives are being uh, dismissed in favor of um, Christian nationalism, in favor of this deep cognitive dissonance that Christian nationalism is, uh, all the way to the anti-scientism of um, religious fundamentalism,
Yeah.
and that
RFK.
seems to be right of our health. Someone in charge of the health of the nation rejecting science. So how I think we need to think about that claim
Mm.
that people are so persuaded by science these days, because I don't think they are. And I think they're at this point we need to escalate with again with story. That story is seems to be
Yeah.
more salient than science right
Yeah.
now. So what do you think?
Well, I didn't mean to say that science is the only knowledge validating system, and it is absolutely correct that this horrendous anti-intellectualism, this is kind of grim what I have to say here for a minute, but I saw in when I was in high school, they showed us films that had been made by the Sixth Army, which were basically designed to glorify uh, the victory in World War II
Mm.
as a victory against evil and so forth. And it had really a bad impression on me. And I think my whole revulsion against violence kind of was very much seeded
Mm.
by that film. There's a scene in that film that has come up into my mind again and again recently. And it's taking place in Mussolini's Italy. And you see like I don't know, a company or a platoon of black shirts, Italian fascist soldiers. And they're saying something which you can't hear, but the narrator says, the greatest intellect in the world can be silenced by this. And they all pull out their daggers.
Oh,
And it was a shockaroo, I have to
yeah.
say. And that was like an extreme form of
Yeah.
what you were just saying, Stephanie, that the attack that the current administration is making on human welfare
Yeah.
is an attack on truth,
Yeah.
an attack on reason.
Gosh. And so many of the people in my immediate vicinity at the monastery
Mhm.
are Chinese, either from China or their parents are from China very often. And the stories that I hear about in the way that the the government systematically purged itself of intellectuals and people who had
Yeah,
a different narrative or
yeah,
different idea of what's the party line, the literal party line, and the horrors
yeah.
that happened. Even the gentleman that I first studied Taiji with,
Mhm.
I was considering discipling under this person. His own father had been tortured to death by the government for teaching Taiji in a way that included the idea of qi and spirit and internal cultivation. And even the names of the forms had to be changed to fit Mao's doctrine and this kind of thing, because anything outside of that was a threat. And so if we see subtle versions of our own history moving in that direction, we look and we say, oh, okay, this is echoing again.
Yep.
Yeah.
And there's another very important way in which the dice are loaded against us, and that is that we need to not only reinvent a lot of parts of the story. We need to invent the whole framework, or invent a new framework. In the old framework really relied on a centralized hierarchical organization.
Mm.
And the only alternative to centralized hierarchical organization was chaos.
Ah.
And I remember I was standing in a cafe one time, and the fellow ahead of me online was a colleague who was in the engineering school. And normally I would never speak to engineers, but I had been given his name by a very advanced thinking friend of mine, Wes Churchman, and his name escapes me at the moment. It'll come back, but he was so interesting. I invited him to talk to my beginning class in peace and conflict studies. It was unheard of, a physical science person, an engineer in a humanities class. Well, Nagler, what are you doing? And what he said was a revelation for me.
Mm.
And that was that we are very good at understanding disunity or hierarchy. But what we cannot, the way he started the conversation was, why is it that physics has made such incredible advances? And it was one of the great breakthroughs of human adventure. And biology is just this silly little thing limping along. You're assigning Latin names to different animals, and that's about it. And he said it's because we can handle unity, but we cannot handle diversity.
Mm.
And so what we need a new worldview of unity in diversity. And that's precisely what Martin Luther King was getting at when he said, you can never be what you ought to be
Yeah.
until I am what I ought to be.
Mm.
In other words, it's each of us, the three of us, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, realizing exactly what each of us is, that we have a unity
Mm.
in a way that maybe is a little bit hard to grasp. Instead of imposing one label from the top and saying we're all Americans or what have you.
Mm. Well,
So
an
unity
ecosystem.
and diversity as has been kind of a mantra for me
Mm.
since then. But again, the way I started this long diatribe was to say that this is another way that we have a much bigger job than Christian nationalists or any radical right, any people on the right-hand side,
Mm.
because they're operating within a given framework, but we have to reinvent the framework.
Well, and I feel like that is it ties everything together that we've been talking about so far, this unity and diversity, this quality that you can bring an engineer to, for instance, a peace and conflict studies class because everyone is involved in this process. We all have stake in this game. If
Yeah,
we are to recognize, if we're going to bring a table and we're going to create a hope tank, and we want as many diverse opinions as possible, because even in an
yeah,
ecosystem, in my garden, in a
yeah,
farm, a monoculture always falls apart. It's a self-destructive cycle. We have to have diversity to have resiliency, to have
that's right.
evolution. And
Yeah,
so that process of growth must come from more than just one perspective.
yeah.
Sometimes we'll teach classes on cooking and nutrition, and that conversation I could bring in anybody from an Olympic athlete to an ethicist who wants to talk about how that functions, to
Yeah.
the farmer themselves, to a professor who talks about the botanical nature of these things. And everybody has a stake and something to share in that process. And then we
Hmm.
create the best recipe possible because of that. And so I really appreciate everything that you're
Yeah,
mentioning. And I'm
yeah.
curious to know if we can bring up more specific discussions about this wild hope tank rumor with which I've heard so much.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Michael, when I first started visiting the Metta Center there was this institution already in place that Michael and the team at that time had started in Berkeley. And the idea was to have a think tank. And one of Michael's friends said, we don't need another think tank. We need a hope tank.
Yeah.
So it starts with usually the format that we use at Metta starts with the meditation together as a group, and then a potluck, usually vegetarian potluck, breakfast.
Count me in.
Yeah. And then people, we get our food and chai and sit around and have a conversation together where everything is on the table, except for the violent solution. So we're practicing, and it's more than a conversation because it's community building.
Yeah.
It's hopeful, it's heart strengthening. So it empowers people who attend it, but also we want to make them even more purposeful at this point and say, we're having a problem with the story, the salience of the peaceful story in our world is what taking the idea of conflict being a game that we're supposed to win, a game that we win. Let me just say that we need to turn these narratives around, and the best way to do that is to start talking with one another and getting ideas. So even if it drawing upon this rich tradition, I think especially of Thich Nhat Hanh and the Plum Village folks, Thich Nhat Hanh's approach is that once you start meditating with their lineage, you need to start a sangha wherever you go. Even if it's with the tree in your yard, in the very Thich Nhat Hanh style. But here we're saying, even if you have one friend and you locally go and like meet for a cup of tea and you just make the conversation about nonviolence, and then get back to us, tell us what were some of the ideas that emerged, what did you realize, what was the realization that happened in that conversation, and we can start collecting these ideas from people and trying to use those messages for in writing, in story, in art, to try to work on, again, this problem of story salience. And so that's really how it works. The trick, I found that when people have tried to do hope tanks without Metta being directly involved, is that it can get quickly off topic, or can focus too much on conflicts themselves instead of the deeper principles. So the idea would be to keep focusing on what's the principle, what's the story behind this, what's my awakening, what is awakening in me right now about this, what's my aha moment here. That's what we're looking for, is what made you change your mind about something, and what is the deeper issue. And then again, always staying, quote, hopeful, and that nonviolence is the solution. So, coming together and talking about, well, how are we going to stop a genocide? And then, well, we can't do anything about that. And then, well, nonviolence doesn't work anymore, and go down the rabbit hole. It's the wrong way. Keep it, use it as a discipline, as kind of a nonviolent discipline in conversation. So, but everything's on the table.
Yeah, and that's what kept hope tanks from simply devolving into chaos, is that we had nonviolence as kind of the shining ideal that everything was pointed at.
And we keep getting at the principles, like what's happening underneath the surface here. And it's really interesting, the people that we talk to, they go there pretty quickly, especially after you had a moment of silence before, it helps go there. And some really strong tea.
The tea in my cat cup.
That's very sweet.
There's an English philosopher that I like very, very much. I was drawn to her because of her compassion for animals.
Mm.
And she wrote an important book on animal rights, and she said something about it which I had been thinking, but nobody had confirmed for a long time, and that is that the idea of rights is a dead end. It doesn't get us anywhere because anyone can claim they have a right to anything, and nobody has any fixed, ideas of what rights are. So she rejected that idea and brought in some other things instead. But she had an idea of order that I really, really liked, and that was the way to get big is to stay small and well connected.
Interesting.
Yeah. So instead of, summing everything up, to one usually male
Yeah.
head hierarchy, have these somewhat fluid but definitely connected little networks. And then I read this very interesting book by this, I think, a Jewish fellow who had been a student at Berkeley called The Starfish and the Spider.
Hmm.
To summarize it, he said that hierarchical organization is very vulnerable
Hmm.
and decentralized organization is very strong. And that, of course, is the way of nature. It's a decentralized organization where, a billion entities, each with a separate identity, can be part of a coordinated whole.
Mm.
And I don't think human beings can escape that.
Yeah. Mm. Within this practice and this process of something like a hope tank as a
Hmm.
as a as a tool of personal cultivation and development of a community and
Right.
the cultivation of a larger decentralized movement where everybody is
Hmm.
generating the force of love in their own space. Uh, I'm wondering about some of the most useful principles and rules. Stephanie, you mentioned one that, for instance, if I'm teaching seated meditation posture, it's very clear from our practice that if we are just working on posture and I spend all my time thinking about the tight spots in my body, we become more and more and more tight. And our minds close down and we don't develop. But if we pay a little extra quiet attention to the spaces that are softening open, that softness becomes easier. The mind gets more stable. And so I can see how by emphasizing the terrible things happening in the world or the intractable problems that we can't face. Oh, I can't solve genocide. Well, I guess I should go home. And how that itself would actually cause more problems within the community that it solves. And so I'm wondering, with the experience that you've had so far, for the people who are thinking about developing this at home, hopefully this reaches some people who are willing to take this for a spin. What are
Hmm.
some of the most useful immediate ground rules that you'd recommend, other than chai tea, um, to help people formulate a useful session of hope tankery?
Oh, well, thanks for asking that question. It's a great question. I want to formulate these thoughts with you all
Mm.
here. Um, I think one is to start with an inner practice of some kind because we need to bring our full selves to the conversation.
Mhm.
And so, whether you do that together or you do it on your own, whether you feel comfortable with traditional practices or you feel comfortable going for a long, quiet walk in nature,
Mm.
get your mind calm and fresh,
Mm.
I think is the beginning. If you don't have a lot of time for that, even just make sure you include some aspect of making the mind fresh before the meeting. Um, you'll want to, so number one, get fresh, get a fresh mind. The other one I'd say is it doesn't have to be a large group of people. It can just be two people.
Mm.
It can be three people. usually in the past, whenever we've had hope tanks, when I first started coming to Meta, so it was every week we'd have them. And sometimes one person would show up. That's when Maya came to a hope tank and she was the only one. And it was lovely. And sometimes there's, a guest visiting and there's a lot of people
Mm,
that come. Use the opportunity. So I'd say also just it doesn't matter how many people. Ideally try to do it in person. So, all right, let's go there. You don't need a lot of people, but do try to do it in person because of that connection is important. This is
mm,
more than a conversation. It's about reconnecting and helping our minds to grow
mm.
in a good way, not in the way that we don't want our minds to take over. All right, so not numbers aren't important, but doing it in person is.
Yeah, there seems to be a natural limit, actually, that beyond 10 or 12 people,
Mm,
Mhm.
the
Yeah,
vibe changes and people's presentations become more performative.
mm,
that's
Uh,
true.
yeah, that's why I noticed when I was teaching seminars at Berkeley, 10 or 12 graduate students was really a really good number to work with because it was a large enough number to feel like you were doing something significant. Fortunately, the subjects that I taught never attracted large groups of people.
Mhm. I do want to that what that does remind me though, Michael, is that say you do have a community of people or you put it out on, a message board and you get people to attend.
Uh-huh.
You'll want to have a few a few problems can occur in this. You want to have some facilitation
Yeah.
uh, agreements, I think, in some way that if the conversation ends up being between two people and there's 10 people in the room,
yeah.
Hmm.
you'll want to watch out for that.
Hmm.
Some people decide, do you want a talking stick if that kind of thing is necessary. We don't usually go that route. We want to sort of trust people's ability to read the room and to kind of go with the flow. But yeah, you'll want to have some kind of facilitation agreements, which
Speaking
also
as a
would include,
neurodivergent person, I really appreciate the talking stick method because
mm,
it took me a long time to learn to read those social cues and to
yeah,
recognize culture to culture and how to adjust how long I spoke and those kinds of qualities, or if I spoke at all, the practice of making eye contact with my camera. Um, having set rules makes it much easier for people of varying cultures and neurodivergent internal processes to flow more easily with the rest of the group. So I'm a really big fan of rules.
good, good, good point. Okay. Um, so all right, that maybe also making sure, part of the the a helpful guideline would be to stay on topic as much as possible so that you're not having 10 different conversations.
Mm,
But try to keep a conversation going until it's as complete as it can be before we say, okay, let's switch over to something else.
mm.
And what else, Michael? What are other?
I would say choosing, you can't just say, okay, let's talk about anything,
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
everybody will talk about their immediate superficial feelings. And again, it'll become very performative.
Mm,
On the other hand, you don't want to say we're going to be in these restricted silos. So you want to pick some basic principles that are alive, that are like organic principles. And nonviolence is one of those, or is the overriding most organic principle. And it implies the innate value of every person,
mm,
in fact, of everything that, as St. Augustine said, and Dostoevsky also said, love every person.
Mm.
That so that's one guiding principle, and that implies that every person has a point of view. And as you were saying earlier, John, we want to bring in diverse, but not random.
Yeah.
I'm adding a little something. There should be diverse, but not chaotically random
Mm-hmm.
points of view. And once you've identified nonviolence as the theme of a hope tank, it means that you're going to be guiding towards the kind of orientation to conflict that Stephanie was talking about.
Mm.
That disagreements that we have will often be complementary viewpoints. And if they do have to be adjudicated, like they can't both be in the room, they're conflict with one another, then we have a humane way of going about that.
Mm.
Never violates the sanctity of the individual. So,
Mm.
I mean, you're probably getting a bit of an idea of this, John, but most of our best ideas at the Metta Center percolated up out of those hope tanks.
And and it actually brings up another thing that I'm thinking about. Again, make the hope tanks really intentional. Invite people that you feel comfortable sharing with at first until you get used to it, until you create a container that feels
Mhm.
open.
Mm.
And a lot of times, Michael and I on Mondays, we generally hope tank together. Like we'll go
Yeah.
and have a coffee in the
Uh-huh.
morning and just start, planning the revolution. Or and we never think that we'll have that conversation, but we often do, and it's because there's a lot of trust and a lot of and we're both studying and trying to practice nonviolence. So um, do hope tanks with people that you feel comfortable with to get started, and that you feel like you can really talk to. And then also giving each other the benefit of the doubt, like letting people, that when we talk about unity and diversity in the world or in groups, we also have like a diversity within ourselves
Oh, yeah.
that's like sometimes is straining itself, and it comes
Yeah.
out as a unity, and
Yeah.
like just being allowed to kind of explore other perspectives that exist in your heart, and putting them out there and getting ideas usually helps us to go deeper and see the deeper principles.
Mhm.
Mm.
Mhm.
So that's super important.
We
Yeah.
contain
Yeah.
multitudes. Yeah.
Yeah, we do. And to see that in ourselves. So, and then I think we'd like to just put something up on the Meta website. I don't know if I'll have it up in the next couple of days, but I will absolutely send it to you, John, when we have it. Just giving people this idea, some write-up about it, and some, tools for getting started. Obviously, always visiting the Meta site and studying nonviolence, going to the variety of different organizations
Mhm.
that do this work, studying your channel, all of this. When you're doing this studying, it's just sort of getting together and debriefing about what you're learning too.
Yeah.
But really, this project has the larger intention of we need to engage with the dominant paradigms, like uh, co-opting
Mm.
of what
Mm.
conflict means, of
Mm.
what and of who we are. And so we need to start gathering the story together from the larger community,
Mm.
which we hope some people watching this will engage with. So feed it back to us, whatever you're coming up with in your local spaces. Feed it back to us so that we can decide what do we do next? How do we? Maybe you had a huge aha moment in your group, and um, you come up with an idea for a really good bumper sticker that we're gonna start, sharing to get people thinking and talking about differently, and maybe we can share
Right.
ideas across the groups
Mm.
to get
Mm.
people, to keep feeding these hope tanks. So
Mm.
yeah,
Aha.
maybe
What does it say? It says we.
Yeah.
yeah, that's a new sticker we have right now. This was brainstormed from some friends thinking about how do we create a sticker that helps change people's minds about immigration problems, ICE, without being while staying within the confines of Metta.
It's
And
not very
so
confining.
we came up with the slogan, just we are all human no matter our birthplace. And then we put that on a sticker. That's
I love that.
yeah. So we've got stickers too for anybody who wants stickers. Our friend actually just made a sticker donation to us saying that when her pack of stickers arrives, she wants to give them away to anybody who wants to use them, especially like just to like post in all over the place. So I don't know if that's
Very
property
California
destruction or
thing to
not.
do. It's very, very California.
Is it California?
So I have two questions about
Yep.
some of the proposals that you've recommended. One is about whether or not, in your experience, either within hope tanks or even in a larger classroom, if it's useful to, within certain guidelines, to have just free form thought, or if it's better, like jazz, where there's some guidelines, there's a chord structure and everyone sort of agrees to something, but for the most part it's free jazz? Or do you prefer instead to have a theme that you come in with and you choose to free form discussion around that topic? Which is more?
Yeah, well, we've experimented with this quite a bit, and it's not the same when we have, say, hey, everyone read this and then come together and talk about this.
Like a book club.
No, this is different. And usually the way it starts is that we have our meditation or a quiet moment, whatever people do. And then we come and we sit around together in a circle and someone says what's on their mind. And who wants to get us started today? What's on your mind? And somebody might have been thinking something through quite a bit and is like, I want to explore this, and maybe two people, and we just kind of all decide what direction we want to go in. But I think let us be spontaneous.
Okay.
I think actually both models can work. It's a question of knowing when to use which. And that was our experience in Hope Tanks, that sometimes people would come in with a burning issue, a concern that was really bothering them, and we would definitely honor that and take off from that and hope that by the end of the hour or whatever it was,
3 hours sometimes.
3 hours, they would have some help, some insights. But other times, it's just, who wants to start? Nobody had any particular issue except the one issue that we all have all the time, which is, well, what are we going to do about the violence?
Yeah. And the other question that I had was around, I know that this last several years, at the time of this recording, has been relatively new for us with the integration of the virtual world within our communities. And I'm curious about, because you mentioned that it's best to have groups come together in person. And of course, I want to make allowances for people who are not able to get together in groups because of whatever issues. One of the nice things about the virtual world is that it's made it more available for people that have immune weaknesses or that cannot travel, or whatever their reasons are. They have 7 children running around and they're at home. And so I'm wondering about ways that you may find useful for people to join together. So for instance, when you're sitting together and you literally are breathing together, which is a really fun, the root of the word conspiracy, right? So you have your conspiracy of hope, and people are coming together and choosing to join together in something. And I'm wondering about how well that functions, because of course we know that sometimes these things work outside of local space and time. And if people even watching these videos later, for instance, can come together and join in with that field, if you would have recommended methods or practices that people can do in order to synchronize and
Yeah.
harmonize.
Yeah, I think those are all good points and things that I've thought about for some time. I think there's something about the oversaturation of being online at this
Mhm.
point, though, that
Yes.
if if our online spaces were taken away, all of a sudden, have we talked with our neighbors? Do we, this epidemic of loneliness in our communities, we can talk to anybody online. We can find people online, but I think loneliness also comes from not having community
Mm.
like in our local spaces.
Yeah.
So I do want to emphasize that um, try not to lose that,
Yeah.
but if you're in extenuating circumstances, then finding uh, others is obviously the next best thing.
Mhm.
Um, and whatever those means that you do to take
Yeah.
that together. And you could do quiet time together online, obviously. Every one of us has a wellspring of creative energy that I don't want to be too prescriptive about exactly how to do it, but I believe that if someone is into the idea and they feel like they can't be in person, that they also have the ingenuity to come up with the way to make that work for them. Yeah.
That's fair. Mhm.
Yeah, I'm kind of echoing that in slightly different terms. I think my experience has been, and I haven't really formulated this in quite the same way before, so thank you all. My experience has been that in small group connections, you learn something that you can then apply even when that small connection is not available.
Mm.
Uh, for example, we had a very big lunch here one time. There's like maybe 50 people who were having lunch. And at the end of lunch, I walked clear across the lunchroom to put my dishes away. And just at the edge, a woman said she wanted to talk to me. So she was sitting down and I'm standing up. So even though I'm not particularly tall, I had to kind of bend over holding all these dirty dishes. And it's very uncomfortable. And suddenly I realized two things. I knew exactly what she wanted to say, and I knew that she had a long time to get there. It was going to take her a long time to say this thing, which was already obvious. And here I am, bent over and all of that. And I said, this is terrible. And then suddenly in order to save myself from this yucky situation, I actually broke through to a somewhat deeper level. And I said, since we both know where she's going with this conversation, the content is not the point.
Mhm.
What is the point? And the point was that she was trying to make human contact with me.
Yeah.
And as soon as I realized that, I felt so much better. I felt so good about it that, yeah, this is a very valid thing to do. So the question then is, how can we, assimilate those moments of ideal connectedness when we're together in the same room
Mm.
and apply them in much wider situations where we don't have that kind of connectedness.
Mm,
Like I think I learned something about being a human being
Yeah.
in that one moment that I can apply elsewhere. That does not mean that I'm through with being in small groups with people. No, I need to renew that all the time. But it also doesn't mean that life exists only in small groups.
Hmm.
If you, as Mary Midgley says, you can be well connected with people once you realize what your basic humanity is.
yeah. And I'd say don't take it for granted. I was thinking today, I was in touch with somebody over in France, and I was like, goodness, I'm communicating with somebody over in France right now who's in an extremely different context, a city,
Amazing.
a different, culture. And I've gotten to the point where I just take that for granted that I'm talking to people all
Yeah.
over the country, all over the world, all the time.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, 20 years ago, I thought that was pretty neat that I was in touch with somebody in a different
Ah,
culture. So I
Yeah.
mean, don't lose
Big
that.
Tracy watch. Yeah.
Yeah, don't lose that awe of that we are breaking the boundaries of time
Yeah.
and space with these technologies, and
Yeah.
um, it's pretty darn amazing.
Yeah.
It is.
So one of our biggest responsibilities in the modern world, us as in everybody, is how to use this capacity for unity and diversity,
Hmm.
for human welfare, human advancement, and not to use it for artificial uniformity that crushes the spirit.
Yeah. Mm.
Well, John, thank you so much for having us today.
I'm so
Yeah,
happy to have
gosh,
you with me. Gosh. Any
so
last
nothing.
things I should have asked you about before we head out? Spaces that people should look other than the Metta Center website for more information?
They should start there, and they should see the film, of course.
And see the film. Very
Yeah,
important. Third Harmony.
yeah,
Uh, no, thanks. Anything left out? I'd say, as always, study nonviolence,
yeah,
study it across disciplines, and know that you have that power within yourself.
yeah.
Here's something that I want to say. Try to avoid cynicism. Let's just avoid cynicism these days. It's really easy to be
Yeah.
ongoingly annoyed and growing into a space of cynicism about people and the state of the world, and it just brings everybody down. Like let's try to be engines of uh not of I don't want to say positivity, but just not being cynical.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Let's
Clear,
be
clear
engines of hope.
sighted.
Let's do hope. Space, listening, good things.
That's
yeah,
right.
I guess cynicism is shutting down of energy. So an opening up of space and energy and curiosity and care and compassion and all that's good in people.
I
yeah.
love that.
I
Yeah.
spent years and years learning how to figure out the etymology of every single English word. And cynicism actually means like is being a dog
Oh.
Oh no,
in the
dogs
sense
are
of,
nice.
yeah, well, but in the sense of a snarling dog.
Oh,
Like Heraclitus says,
scared.
dogs bark at those whom they do not recognize.
Yeah.
Well, also, I mean, dogs snarl because they're scared or hurt,
Mhm. Yeah,
So to recognize that what's behind cynicism is often fear and pain.
That's right. Yeah. Mm.
Thank you for John. Thanks for everything you're doing,
yeah,
and
it's
you
been
are
a
a
great
peace builder, peacemaker,
time.
celebrating International Day of Peace. Thanks
Yes.
for
Yes.
bringing us in.
I'm so excited about it. Yeah, I have my 24-hour video cast. I can make this part
Nice.
of it. I'm so happy that you
Good.
joined me. And thank you both for the work that you're doing out there for me personally, but also for the community at large. I feel like that this natural movement in the world, this is the most
Yeah,
powerful force in human experience. And so to become part of that, I feel like it must be part of a flourishing and blossoming of human
yeah,
nature.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yay.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
We appreciate you.
Bye. You
Bye.
too. Bye.